The entire first-class cabin gasped as security officers dragged Dr. Isaiah Washington off the plane. Then absolute silence fell when Terrence Hughes, CEO of Skyline Airways, walked down the aisle, halted the officers, and embraced Isaiah. "This man saved my daughter's life," Terrence announced. "He flies wherever he wants." Before we dive into this incredible story of justice and recognition, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to join our community of storytellers. Now let's find out how Dr. Washington ended up in handcuffs and what happened after that powerful moment. Dr. Isaiah Washington adjusted his navy suit jacket as he stepped onto Skyline Airways Flight 347, bound from Atlanta to San Francisco. At 45, the cardiac surgeon carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent decades perfecting his craft at Memorial Hospital. In his leather messenger bag were notes for the presentation he would deliver at the International Cardiac Innovation Conference, groundbreaking research on minimally invasive procedures that could revolutionize heart surgery. "Good afternoon," Isaiah nodded at the flight attendant standing at the entrance to first class. "Sir, this is the first-class cabin," the attendant, whose name tag read Melissa Parker, stated with a thin smile. "Yes, I'm aware," Isaiah replied, holding up his boarding pass. "Seat 3A. Melissa glanced at his ticket, her eyebrows rising slightly. She handed it back without another word, but her expression spoke volumes. Isaiah navigated to his window seat, stowing his bag carefully in the overhead bin. This wasn't the first time his presence in premium spaces had been questioned. He remembered the TSA agent who had pulled him aside for random screening, while white executives in similar attire walked through unhindered. The hotel receptionist who insisted on seeing his ID when he checked into the presidential suite for a medical conference. The luxury car salesman who suggested he might be more comfortable looking at the pre-owned section. Each memory was a papercut on his dignity, but Isaiah had learned long ago that maintaining composure was essential. He'd worked twice as hard his entire life to reach this position, and he wasn't about to let these small indignities derail him. The cabin filled gradually. A white businessman in his 50s, Bradley Wilson, took the aisle seat in Isaiah's row, barely acknowledging him with a grunt before burying his face in financial reports. Across the aisle, a woman in her 30s with highlighted blonde hair, Amelia Taylor, according to the conversation she was having on her phone, kept glancing nervously in Isaiah's direction while discussing her upcoming presentation to venture capitalists. 2 rows behind, a Latina woman in her 40s, Sofia Rodriguez, caught Isaiah's eye and offered a warm smile. He returned it, recognizing the silent solidarity. "Can I see your boarding pass again?" Melissa appeared beside Isaiah's seat, hand extended. "Certainly," Isaiah said, retrieving it from his jacket pocket. This would mark the 3rd time his ticket had been verified. Melissa studied it longer than necessary, then handed it back without apology. "Just making sure everyone's in the right place." As she moved down the aisle, Isaiah noticed she didn't request to see anyone else's boarding pass. When the pre-flight service began, Isaiah observed as Melissa served the white passengers first, making her way to him last. "Something to drink, sir?" she asked, her tone noticeably cooler than it had been with the others. "Just water, please." As she poured, she commented loud enough for nearby passengers to hear, "We've had so many people trying to sit in seats they haven't paid for lately. It's becoming a real problem." Isaiah took the water with a "thank you," and returned to reviewing his presentation notes. He had delivered similar talks dozens of times, but this conference could significantly advance his research funding. He couldn't afford distractions. As the plane took off, Isaiah caught Amelia shifting uncomfortably in her seat, clutching her purse closer whenever he moved. Bradley had created a makeshift barrier with his newspaper, clearly defining the boundary between their seats. These subtle behaviors were all too familiar, the physical manifestations of implicit bias. Isaiah took a deep breath, focusing on the clouds outside his window. Just another day navigating a world that constantly questioned his right to occupy space. An hour into the flight, as the cabin service was concluding, a commotion erupted across the aisle. My wallet. It's gone. Amelia's voice cut through the ambient hum of the aircraft. She frantically rummaged through her purse, panic rising in her voice. I had it when I boarded, I'm sure of it. Melissa rushed over, leaning in close as Amelia described the missing item, a small red leather wallet containing her credit cards and $500 in cash. When did you last see it? Melissa asked, eyes darting around the cabin. When I paid for a magazine at the terminal, Amelia replied. I definitely had it when I sat down. I remember putting it in my purse. It was then that Isaiah noticed Melissa's gaze shifting toward him, lingering a beat too long. The implication was clear, subtle but unmistakable. Did anyone pass by your seat? Melissa asked, still looking in Isaiah's direction. Amelia hesitated. Well, he got up once to use the restroom, she said, tilting her head toward Isaiah. The accusation hung in the air, unspoken but palpable. Bradley Wilson lowered his newspaper. You know, I've read about these scams. Professional pickpockets targeting business flights. His eyes flicked toward Isaiah. These people are getting more sophisticated. These people. Isaiah repeated, his voice level despite the anger simmering beneath. Bradley shrugged, not bothering to clarify who these people were. From 2 rows back, Sofia Rodriguez spoke up. That's completely inappropriate. You have no basis for that kind of insinuation. I'm just stating facts, Bradley retorted. No one's making accusations here. But the damage was done. Other passengers began glancing at Isaiah with newfound suspicion. Melissa picked up the cabin phone. I'm going to call our air marshal. We should investigate this properly. Minutes later, a stocky man with a crew cut made his way from the back of the plane. His badge identified him as Kent Davis, Skyline Airways Security. Ma'am, can you tell me what happened? Kent asked Amelia, who recounted her story, with frequent glances toward Isaiah. When she finished, Kent turned to Isaiah. Sir, would you mind telling me where you've been during this flight? Isaiah maintained his composure, though the injustice of the situation burned in his chest. I've been in my seat working on my presentation for most of the flight, except for one brief visit to the lavatory approximately 20 minutes ago. And what do you do for a living, sir? Kent's tone suggested the question was more than casual interest. I'm a cardiac surgeon at Memorial Hospital in Atlanta. I'm traveling to San Francisco to present research at a medical conference. Kent nodded, his expression revealing nothing. Would you mind if I check your carry-on items? On what grounds? Isaiah asked, his patience wearing thin. I haven't left my seat except once, in full view of everyone around me. I've been focused on my work. Sir, we're just trying to recover the lady's property. If you have nothing to hide. The familiar phrase, a tactic used to pressure innocent people into surrendering their rights. Isaiah knew the routine all too well. I understand your position, Officer Davis, but I decline. I have done nothing to warrant being searched. Whispers rippled through the cabin. Kent's expression hardened. Sir, when there's a theft on an aircraft. A voice from across the aisle interrupted. Wait. Amelia was on her hands and knees, reaching under her seat. I found it. It must have fallen out of my purse. She held up the red wallet, relief washing over her face. The tension in the cabin should have dissipated. It didn't. Well, that's good news, Kent said, still watching Isaiah. Glad we got that sorted out. No apology. No acknowledgement of the baseless suspicion cast on Isaiah. Amelia mumbled a half-hearted, sorry for the confusion, without making eye contact. Bradley returned to his newspaper with a dismissive grunt that sounded suspiciously like, still. As Kent returned to his seat, a clear division had formed in the cabin. Some passengers looked ashamed at what had transpired, while others seemed to cling to their suspicions despite the evidence. Sophia caught Isaiah's eye and shook her head in disgust at what she'd witnessed. Isaiah returned to his notes, but the words swam before him. This was far from the first time he'd been presumed guilty based solely on his appearance. Throughout medical school, residency, and even as an attending physician, he'd faced similar prejudice. Patients requesting another doctor before he'd even spoken a word. Nurses questioning his orders more stringently than those from his white colleagues. Security guards following him in the hospital when he wasn't wearing his white coat. Each incident added another layer of armor he was forced to wear, another reminder that no matter his achievements, certain people would always see his skin color first and his credentials second. The plane continued westward, the atmosphere in the first-class cabin now charged with unspoken tension, the incident having drawn a clear line between passengers. Some avoided eye contact with Isaiah out of embarrassment, others out of lingering suspicion. For Isaiah, it was just another day navigating a world that constantly required him to prove his innocence. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some turbulence ahead. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts." The plane dipped and shuddered as it entered a pocket of rough air. Overhead bins rattled. A few passengers gasped as their drinks sloshed. The seatbelt sign illuminated with an urgent ding. 3 rows behind Isaiah, a commotion broke the tension. An elderly man clutched his chest, his breathing labored. "Harold? Harold, what's wrong?" The woman beside him, presumably his wife, gripped his arm in panic. Harold Freeman, a man in his 70s with silver hair and ashen skin, slumped forward in his seat. His wife's voice escalated to a scream. "Help! My husband needs help!" Melissa rushed down the aisle, her previous demeanor replaced by professional concern. "Sir! Sir, can you hear me?" Harold's only response was a weak groan. His skin had taken on a bluish tinge, his breathing shallow and irregular. "Is there a doctor on board?" Melissa called out, scanning the cabin. "We have a medical emergency." Isaiah unbuckled his seatbelt and stood. "I'm a doctor. Cardiac surgeon." Melissa hesitated, her gaze flickering between Isaiah and Harold. The doubt in her eyes was unmistakable. "Ma'am, this man is in distress," Isaiah said firmly. "I need to examine him now." Bradley Wilson scoffed from his seat. "Maybe we should wait for a real doctor." "I assure you, I am a real doctor," Isaiah replied, his voice steady despite the insult. "I'm the chief of cardiothoracic surgery at Memorial Hospital." Kent, who had returned to the front of the cabin, approached with caution. "Sir, we'll need to verify your credentials." Harold's wife sobbed. "Please, someone help him." The absurdity of the situation wasn't lost on Isaiah. A man was potentially dying, yet the flight crew was more concerned with questioning Isaiah's qualifications than allowing him to provide care. Sophia stood up from her seat, phone in hand. "This is ridiculous. He just told you he's a cardiac surgeon. The man is clearly having a cardiac event. Are you really going to let him suffer while you check credentials?" The plane hit another patch of turbulence, and Harold slumped further in his seat, his breaths coming in short, painful gasps. "I have the emergency medical kit," a second flight attendant said, rushing forward with a red case. Melissa turned to the passengers. "Is there another medical professional on board? A doctor or nurse?" Silence. "Every second counts in a cardiac event," Isaiah said, stepping past Kent toward Harold. "I'm going to examine this man now." This time, no one stopped him. Isaiah knelt beside Harold, speaking in a calm, reassuring voice. "Sir, I'm Dr. Washington. I'm going to help you. Can you tell me where the pain is?" Harold weakly placed his hand over his heart. Isaiah checked Harold's pulse, rapid and irregular. His breathing was labored, skin clammy. All signs pointed to a serious cardiac issue, possibly a heart attack. "I need the medical kit," Isaiah called, and the second flight attendant handed it over without hesitation. Isaiah worked with practiced efficiency, checking Harold's vitals and administering aspirin from the kit. Do you have any medical history I should know about? Any medications? Isaiah asked Harold's wife. He has coronary artery disease. Takes beta blockers and a blood thinner, she replied, her voice trembling. Isaiah nodded, processing the information as he worked. The plane needs to divert to the nearest airport with advanced medical facilities. He requires immediate hospital care. Melissa hesitated. Are you sure that's necessary? We're halfway to San Francisco. Absolutely certain, Isaiah replied, his tone leaving no room for debate. This man is experiencing a serious cardiac event. He needs a catheterization lab, possibly surgery. Inform the captain immediately. As Melissa went to speak with the captain, Isaiah continued monitoring Harold, using the stethoscope from the medical kit to listen to his heart sounds. You're going to be okay, Mr. Freeman, Isaiah assured him, maintaining the calm demeanor that had steadied countless patients in his operating room. We're getting you to a hospital soon. Gradually, the aspirin began to take effect. Harold's breathing eased slightly, though he remained in clear distress. From her seat, Sophia had been recording parts of the interaction. Several other passengers watched in awe as Isaiah worked, their previous suspicions replaced by respect as they witnessed his expertise. The captain is diverting to Denver, Melissa announced, returning. ETA 30 minutes. There will be medical personnel waiting. Good, Isaiah nodded. I'll stay with him until we land. For the next half hour, Isaiah remained by Harold's side, monitoring his condition, administering oxygen from the plane's emergency supply, and keeping him stable. He spoke in reassuring tones to both Harold and his wife, explaining each step of his care. As the plane began its descent into Denver, Isaiah returned to his seat to prepare for landing, having done everything possible with the limited resources available. Thank you, Doctor, Harold's wife called, tears streaming down her face. Thank you so much. Isaiah nodded acknowledgement, fastening his seatbelt as the plane tilted downward. The atmosphere in the cabin had shifted. Several passengers who had earlier regarded him with suspicion now looked on with newfound respect. But not everyone. Melissa still kept her distance, and Kent watched him with lingering doubt. Bradley Wilson deliberately avoided looking in his direction. As the wheels touched down at Denver International Airport, Isaiah knew he had just saved Harold Freeman's life. What he didn't know was that his own ordeal was far from over. Have you ever witnessed someone being wrongfully accused? The helplessness, the frustration, the sheer injustice of it all. What would you do if you saw someone being targeted for no reason other than the color of their skin? Comment 1, if you've ever stood up for someone facing discrimination, or 2, if you regret staying silent when you should have spoken up. Like this video if you believe in standing against injustice, and subscribe to hear more stories that need to be told. Now, let's see how things went from bad to worse for Dr. Washington. As EMTs boarded the plane to transport Harold Freeman to the hospital, Isaiah Washington returned to his seat, physically and emotionally drained. The cardiac emergency had required all his focus, momentarily pushing aside the discrimination he'd faced earlier. Now, as normalcy resumed, that reality came flooding back. You did good work, Doctor, an elderly woman commented as she passed his seat. Isaiah nodded in appreciation. Perhaps this incident would shift perceptions, at least for the duration of the flight. He reached for his messenger bag, intending to review his presentation during the delay. From the front of the cabin, Melissa Parker whispered something to Kent Davis, both of them glancing in Isaiah's direction. The security officer's expression darkened as he nodded and began making his way down the aisle. Excuse me, Dr. Washington, Kent said, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. May I speak with you about the medical supplies? Isaiah looked up, puzzled. What about them? Several items appear to be missing from the emergency kit after you used it. The accusation hung in the air. Passengers who moments ago had regarded Isaiah with respect now watched with renewed suspicion. That's impossible, Isaiah replied. I used only what was necessary to stabilize Mr. Freeman. Everything else was returned to the kit. Kent's gaze shifted to Isaiah's messenger bag. "Would you mind if I take a look in your personal belongings?" "Yes, I would mind," Isaiah said firmly. "I've done nothing wrong. I just saved a man's life using your inadequate medical kit, and now you're suggesting I stole supplies?" "Sir, there are controlled medications missing. This is a serious matter." Isaiah felt a familiar tightness in his chest, the sensation that accompanied these moments of blatant discrimination. "Which medication specifically?" "I administered aspirin and oxygen. I documented everything in the medical incident report." Kent ignored the question. "Sir, if you have nothing to hide." "That's not the point," Isaiah interrupted. "You're searching me without cause based on an accusation that makes no sense. Why would a cardiac surgeon steal airplane medical supplies?" Around them, first-class passengers watched the exchange. Most averted their eyes, unwilling to get involved. Bradley Wilson smirked slightly, as if his earlier suspicions had been validated. From her seat, Sofia Rodriguez raised her phone, clearly recording the interaction. "Ma'am, please put that away," Kent ordered. "It's not illegal to record," Sofia replied calmly. "I'm documenting this interaction for everyone's protection." Kent turned back to Isaiah. "Doctor, I'm just following protocol. Medical supplies are missing, and as the only person who accessed the kit. The flight attendants also accessed the kit," Isaiah pointed out. "Did you search them?" Kent's silence was answer enough. "This is beyond inappropriate," Isaiah continued. "I demand to speak with the captain." "The captain is busy preparing for our departure," Kent replied. "This will go much faster if you cooperate." Isaiah weighed his options. He could continue refusing, potentially escalating the situation, or submit to the humiliating search to end the ordeal. Neither option felt right, but the latter seemed the path of least resistance. "Fine," he said finally. "Search the bag. But I want this documented." Kent began rifling through Isaiah's messenger bag, pulling out medical journals, his laptop, presentation materials, and personal items, displaying them for all to see. The invasion of privacy was complete and deliberate. "Satisfied?" Isaiah asked when Kent found nothing incriminating. Instead of acknowledging his error, Kent pointed to a small leather case. "What's in there?" "My personal medical tools. I'm a surgeon, remember?" "Open it, please." Isaiah unzipped the case, revealing a high-end stethoscope, penlight, reflex hammer, and other basic diagnostic tools that any physician would carry. "These are prescribed medications," Kent said, pointing to a small container. "Those are my prescription migraine tablets," Isaiah explained, his patience wearing thin. "Note my name on the label." Kent examined the bottle, then continued searching. His determination to find something incriminating was palpable. Finding nothing in the messenger bag, Kent's attention shifted. "What about your carry-on in the overhead bin?" This was going too far. "Absolutely not," Isaiah stated firmly. "You've searched my personal bag and found nothing. This stops now." Kent's hand moved to his radio. "Sir, your refusal to cooperate is suspicious behavior." "Suspicious behavior?" Isaiah repeated incredulously. "I saved a passenger's life and allowed you to search my personal bag without cause. How is that suspicious?" As the confrontation escalated, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a security situation, we'll be remaining in Denver longer than anticipated. Please stay seated while we resolve this matter." A chill ran through Isaiah as he realized what was happening. The security situation was him. "This is outrageous," Sofia called out from her seat. "He's being targeted because he's black. Everyone can see it." Several passengers shifted uncomfortably. A few nodded in agreement, but most remained silent, complicit in their inaction. "Ma'am, please stay out of this," Kent warned. "I will not," Sofia replied. "I'm a civil rights attorney, and what I'm witnessing is textbook racial profiling. Kent ignored her, turning back to Isaiah. "Sir, due to your uncooperative attitude, I'm going to have to ask you to deplane for further questioning." Uncooperative? Isaiah could hardly believe what he was hearing. "I allowed you to search my bag without probable cause. I've answered all your questions. I saved a man's life." "Sir, please gather your belongings and come with me," Kent insisted. Isaiah looked around the cabin, searching for a sympathetic face, someone willing to speak up. He found few allies among the sea of averted gazes. "This isn't about missing medical supplies," Isaiah said, his voice carrying through the silent cabin. "This is about a black man sitting in first class, a black man who didn't know his place. Let's not pretend otherwise." The uncomfortable truth hung in the air, challenging everyone present to acknowledge what was really happening. "Sir," Kent said, his hand moving to his restraints, "I need you to come with me now." In that moment, Isaiah Washington had a choice to make. Fight a system designed to break him, or walk away with his dignity intact, knowing this battle would be fought another day. He chose the latter. "I'll go," he said, gathering his belongings with deliberate calm. "But no, this isn't over." As Isaiah stood, Sophia called out, "I have everything recorded. They can't get away with this." For that small act of allyship, Isaiah was grateful, even as he prepared to be escorted off a plane like a criminal, not for anything he had done, but for who he was. What would happen next would shock everyone on that plane, including Isaiah himself. "Hands behind your back, sir." Kent Davis's directive cut through the tense silence of the first-class cabin. The security officer held up a pair of plastic restraints, making his intentions clear. "Is that really necessary?" Isaiah asked, his voice calm despite the humiliation burning through him. "I'm complying voluntarily." "Standard procedure for security removals," Kent replied, though nothing about this situation had followed standard procedure. With profound dignity, Isaiah placed his hands behind his back, feeling the sharp bite of plastic as Kent secured the restraints too tightly, another small indignity in a cascade of injustices. The physical discomfort paled in comparison to the psychological wound of being handcuffed in full view of the other passengers. "I need to get my presentation materials," Isaiah said, nodding toward his messenger bag. "I have a keynote address at the International Cardiac Innovation Conference tomorrow." "Your belongings will be held as potential evidence," Kent replied. "Evidence of what crime, exactly?" Isaiah asked, but received no answer. As Kent placed a hand on Isaiah's shoulder to guide him toward the exit, 2 additional Denver airport security officers appeared at the cabin door. The situation had escalated to a full security response, as if Isaiah were a dangerous criminal rather than a respected surgeon who had just saved a passenger's life. "This way, sir," one of the new officers directed, his hand hovering near his holster, a subtle threat that wasn't lost on anyone watching. Isaiah took a deep breath and began the walk of shame through the first-class cabin. Each step was an exercise in maintaining composure in the face of profound injustice. The passengers watched his procession with varied reactions. Some, like Bradley Wilson, seemed smugly validated, as if Isaiah's removal confirmed their biases. Others appeared uncomfortable, their gazes dropping to their laps as he passed, the passive complicity of those unwilling to challenge authority, even when witnessing a clear injustice. Only Sofia Rodriguez maintained eye contact, her phone still recording as she mouthed, "I'll send this to you. They won't get away with this." As Isaiah approached Amelia Taylor's seat, the woman whose missing wallet had initiated the cascade of suspicion, she shrank back slightly, as if his mere proximity were threatening. "For the record," Isaiah said, pausing beside her seat, "I hope Mr. Freeman makes a full recovery. Despite everything that's happened here today, that's what matters most." The simple statement, prioritizing a patient's well-being over his own dignity, seemed to land like a rebuke. Amelia's face flushed with shame as she nodded silently. The officers urged Isaiah forward, through the premium economy section where more passengers watched with curiosity and confusion. The whispers followed him. Fragments of misunderstanding and assumption that would form a narrative he had no power to correct. Did you see that? They're arresting one of the passengers. Must have done something serious. In handcuffs. Can you imagine? Isaiah kept his head high, his expression neutral, though each whispered speculation was a fresh cut. This was a familiar pain, the presumption of guilt that shadowed black men regardless of their accomplishments, credentials, or character. He thought of his parents, who had warned him that his medical degree and white coat would not shield him from racism. His father's words echoed, "Son, excellence is your only option, but know that even excellence won't protect you completely." How right he had been. As they approached the exit door, Isaiah caught a glimpse of his reflection in the plane's window, a distinguished man in handcuffs, being led away like a criminal. The image burned itself into his memory, another scar to carry. The jetway stretched before him like a gauntlet. At its end waited more security personnel and likely police officers, ready to detain him further based on nothing but the color of his skin and the suspicions of biased airline staff. "Dr. Washington," Sophia called from behind him, "I'm contacting civil rights organizations now. This is textbook discrimination." One of the officers turned back. "Ma'am, please remain in your seat until we've resolved this security matter." "The only security matter here is your violation of this man's civil rights," Sophia replied, but she stayed in her seat, knowing she could be more helpful to Isaiah by documenting everything rather than getting herself removed as well. As they reached the terminal, Isaiah saw a small crowd of airport personnel gathered, police officers, airline representatives, and curious onlookers, all watching as he was paraded through the airport in restraints. The humiliation was complete. In an instant, his identity as Dr. Isaiah Washington, respected cardiac surgeon, researcher, lifesaver, had been stripped away. To these people, he was just another black man in handcuffs, presumed guilty without evidence or due process. The officers directed him toward a small security office off the main concourse. Inside, he knew, would be hours of questioning, potentially missed connections, a derailed presentation, and damage to his professional reputation that might take years to repair. All because he had dared to occupy a first-class seat, to be a black man of accomplishment who refused to accept discriminatory treatment. As they approached the security office, Isaiah steeled himself for what was to come. He would maintain his dignity, assert his rights, and fight this injustice through proper channels. It wouldn't be the first time he had to navigate a system designed to break people like him, and it likely wouldn't be the last. What Isaiah couldn't know was that fate was about to deal an unexpected card. One that would transform this moment of profound injustice into something entirely different. The terminal buzzed with the usual airport activity, travelers rushing to gates, announcements echoing over the PA system, the hum of conversations rising and falling like waves. Through this sea of normality, Isaiah Washington moved in handcuffs, flanked by security officers, a jarring disruption to the routine. As they approached the security office, a commotion erupted at the gate they had just left. A deep, authoritative voice cut through the ambient noise. "What the hell is going on here?" Isaiah turned to see a tall, imposing black man in an impeccable charcoal suit striding purposefully toward them. Behind him trailed several airline executives, their faces etched with anxiety as they struggled to keep pace. "Sir, this is a security matter. Please step back," Kent advised, placing himself between the approaching man and Isaiah. The man pulled up short, his eyes widening in recognition as he looked at Isaiah. "Dr. Washington." "Isaiah Washington." Isaiah squinted, recognition dawning. "Terrence." Terrence Hughes. Terrence Hughes, CEO of Skyline Airways, one of the few black executives leading a major airline, stood before him, confusion and anger battling across his features. "Would someone explain why one of the nation's top cardiac surgeons is in handcuffs in my terminal?" Terrence demanded, his voice carrying the unmistakable weight of authority. Kent shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, this man was removed from Flight 347 for security concerns." "I know exactly who he is," Terrence interrupted. "Release him. Immediately." "Sir, with all due respect, we have protocols. And I have the authority to override them," Terrence snapped. Release him. Now. The airport security officers glanced at each other uncertainly, then at Kent, who reluctantly produced a pair of scissors and cut the plastic restraints. Isaiah rubbed his wrists, the relief from the tight bindings immediate but the humiliation lingering. Terrence stepped forward, grasping Isaiah's hand in a firm handshake that transformed into a brief embrace, a powerful visual statement to everyone watching. Dr. Washington saved my daughter's life 6 months ago, Terrence announced, his voice carrying to the gathering crowd. Performed emergency surgery after her car accident when 3 other surgeons said it was hopeless. I would trust this man with my life. The revelation landed like a thunderclap. The security officers shifted uncomfortably. Kent's face had drained of color. Now, Terrence continued, I want to know exactly why a distinguished surgeon who saved a passenger on one of my aircraft was put in handcuffs and treated like a criminal. Melissa Parker had emerged from the jetway, hovering at its periphery. Terrence beckoned her forward with a gesture that brooked no refusal. Ms. Parker, I understand you were the lead flight attendant. Please explain. Melissa straightened her uniform nervously. There was a security concern, sir. Missing medication from the medical kit after Dr. Washington treated a passenger. And your evidence that Dr. Washington took this medication was? Terrence let the question hang in the air. Well, he was the only one who. He was the only one who saved a passenger's life using our medical kit, Terrence finished for her. And for that, you had him removed in handcuffs. Before Melissa could respond, Sofia Rodriguez emerged from the jetway, phone in hand. I have the entire incident recorded, she announced, approaching Terrence. From the false wallet accusation to the medical emergency to the removal. Terrence took the phone, watching several minutes of footage with a darkening expression. When he looked up, his fury was barely contained. Kent, Melissa, you're both suspended, effective immediately. Report to HR tomorrow morning. But sir, Kent began. This isn't a discussion, Terrence cut him off. Now leave, before I decide termination is more appropriate. As the two departed, visibly shaken, Terrence turned back to Isaiah. Dr. Washington, I cannot adequately express my apologies for what you've experienced today. Please, let me make this right. Isaiah, still processing the dramatic turn of events, nodded slowly. I appreciate the intervention, Terrence, but this isn't just about me. This happens to black professionals every day, without a CEO showing up at the right moment. I know, Terrence replied solemnly. That's why we need to do more than just fix this one incident. He turned to his executive team. The flight to San Francisco will be delayed another 30 minutes. I'm personally escorting Dr. Washington back on board. A staff member stepped forward hesitantly. Sir, the captain has already filed a security report. Then he can file an amendment, Terrence replied firmly. And I'll be having a conversation with him about profiling on my airline. Isaiah cleared his throat. Terrence, I appreciate this, but I'm not sure I want to continue on this flight. The environment is hostile. I understand, Terrence nodded. But if you're willing, I think your return would send a powerful message. And I'll be flying with you to San Francisco to ensure nothing else happens. Isaiah considered the proposal. Return to face the passengers who had watched his humiliation. The idea was daunting. But there was something compelling about walking back onto that plane with the CEO of the airline, forcing everyone to confront their biases. What about my presentation? Isaiah asked. I need to be in San Francisco by tomorrow morning. You'll be there, Terrence assured him. I'll make sure of it. As they discussed logistics, Sofia approached with Isaiah's messenger bag and carry-on. I insisted they return your belongings, she explained. The flight attendants didn't want to release them, but I reminded them of the potential legal ramifications of withholding a passenger's property without cause. Thank you, Isaiah said, genuinely moved by her advocacy. Few people would have spoken up the way you did. More should, she replied simply. Terrence turned to the gathering crowd of airport staff and curious onlookers. "I want every Skyline employee to understand what happened here today. This is not how we treat our passengers, any of our passengers. This incident will be used in our training going forward as an example of how implicit bias can lead to overt discrimination." He then looked at Isaiah. "Ready to go back?" Isaiah took a deep breath, straightening his suit jacket and reclaiming his professional demeanor, the armor he had worn his entire career. "Yes," he decided. "Let's go." As they walked back toward the gate, Terrence lowered his voice. "My daughter, Aisha, she asks about you sometimes. The doctor who fixed her heart. She's applying to medical school now, inspired by you." The simple statement reminded Isaiah why he endured these battles. Not just for himself, but for every Aisha who needed to see that excellence was possible, even in a world that often tried to deny it. Together, they approached the jetway, ready to board the plane where everything had started, and where an even more dramatic confrontation awaited. The hushed conversations in the first-class cabin died instantly as Isaiah Washington stepped back onto the plane, Terrence Hughes at his side. Passengers who had been animatedly discussing the security incident froze mid-sentence, eyes wide with shock at the unexpected return. Bradley Wilson nearly choked on his scotch. Amelia Taylor shrank into her seat, suddenly fascinated by her fingernails. Others simply stared, trying to process the dramatic reversal unfolding before them. "Ladies and gentlemen," Terrence announced, his commanding voice filling the cabin, "I'm Terrence Hughes, CEO of Skyline Airways. I want to personally apologize to Dr. Isaiah Washington for the inexcusable treatment he received on this flight." The silence deepened. Isaiah stood tall beside Terrence, his dignity restored but the memory of humiliation still fresh. "Dr. Washington will be continuing to San Francisco as planned," Terrence continued. "And I will be joining this flight to ensure no further incidents occur." A flight attendant, not Melissa, who had been removed from duty, hurried forward with 2 bottles of water. "Your seat is ready, Mr. Hughes. We've prepared 3B for you, right across from Dr. Washington." "Thank you," Terrence replied, then turned back to address the cabin. "Before we depart, I want to make something absolutely clear. What happened here today was textbook racial profiling, and it has no place on my airline or anywhere else." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the faces of the passengers. Some looked ashamed, others defensive, a few nodding in agreement. Dr. Washington is not just any passenger. He is one of the nation's leading cardiac surgeons, chief of cardiothoracic surgery at Memorial Hospital, and the recipient of the Lasker Award for his innovations in minimally invasive procedures. Isaiah watched as this information registered with the passengers. The credentials shouldn't have mattered, no one deserved such treatment, regardless of their achievements, but he understood Terrence's strategy. Sometimes people needed to recognize their biases through stark contrast. Moreover, Terrence continued, "Dr. Washington saved my daughter's life 6 months ago when she was in a car accident. 3 other surgeons had declared her case hopeless. Dr. Washington operated for 14 hours straight and brought her back to us." Gasps rippled through the cabin. The personal connection added emotional weight to Terrence's words. And just today, he saved the life of another passenger on this very flight, only to be thanked with suspicion, accusations, and handcuffs. From the back of the first-class section, Harold Freeman's wife stood up, her eyes brimming with tears. "My husband is stable at the hospital because of Dr. Washington. The doctors said if not for his quick action on the plane, Harold might not have survived. We owe him everything." Her heartfelt testimony shifted the atmosphere further. Several passengers now looked openly ashamed of their earlier silence or suspicion. Not everyone was swayed, however. Bradley Wilson shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable but not contrite. "With all due respect," he said, raising his voice, "there were legitimate security concerns." "Were there?" Terrence cut him off sharply. "Please, Mr. Wilson, enlighten us. What legitimate security concern did a respected surgeon present after saving a passenger's life?" Bradley faltered under Terrence's direct challenge. Well, the missing medications. Which were later found exactly where they belonged in the medical kit, Sophia interjected from her seat. I have that on video too. The simple truth, Terrence continued, is that Dr. Washington was profiled because of his race. Some of you participated actively in that profiling. His gaze lingered on Bradley and Amelia. Others allowed it to happen through your silence. The collective discomfort in the cabin was palpable. This was not the typical corporate damage control passengers might have expected, a private apology, perhaps an upgrade or voucher for future travel. This was a public reckoning. I take full responsibility for the culture that allowed this to happen, Terrence added. And I promise you that Skyline Airways will be implementing comprehensive changes in our training and protocols as a result. He turned to Isaiah. Dr. Washington, your seat awaits you. I hope you'll accept our deepest apologies and allow us to make this right. Isaiah nodded, moving toward his window seat. As he settled in, he noticed the shift in how people looked at him now, with respect, embarrassment, or a complex mixture of both. Amelia Taylor, seated across the aisle, turned toward him hesitantly. Dr. Washington, I'm truly sorry. My behavior was inexcusable. Isaiah acknowledged her apology with a nod, neither absolution nor rejection. Apologies were a beginning, not an end. Other passengers approached one by one, offering their own expressions of regret, for suspecting him, for remaining silent, for allowing injustice to unfold before their eyes. Bradley Wilson remained notably silent, staring straight ahead, his jaw set in stubborn refusal to acknowledge his role. As the cabin crew prepared for departure, Sophia made her way to Isaiah's seat. I've sent you the videos, she said, handing him a business card. I'm a civil rights attorney with Torres and Rodriguez. If you decide to pursue this matter legally, I'd be honored to represent you. Thank you, Isaiah replied, genuinely moved by her consistent allyship throughout the ordeal. I'll think about it. Terrence settled into the seat across the aisle, leaning over to speak privately with Isaiah. This isn't over, he said quietly. What happened today is symptomatic of a much larger problem, both in the airline industry and beyond. I know, Isaiah replied. I've lived it my entire career. I'd like to talk with you about some ideas, Terrence continued. Ways we might leverage this incident for meaningful change. As the plane finally departed Denver, bound for San Francisco, Isaiah gazed out the window at the Rocky Mountains below. The day had taken an extraordinary turn, from respected surgeon to suspected criminal to vindicated victim, all in the span of hours. The humiliation of being handcuffed and paraded through the terminal would not fade quickly. But alongside that pain, Isaiah felt something unexpected emerging, a sense of purpose. Perhaps this incident, as painful as it was, could become a catalyst for change. Harold Freeman would live because Isaiah had been on that flight. Future passengers of color might be treated with dignity because of what had happened today. Young black medical students might see in this story a reminder that excellence was not always enough, but standing firm in your truth always mattered. As the plane climbed higher, leaving the turbulence behind, Isaiah knew one thing with certainty: this flight might end in San Francisco, but the journey it had set in motion was just beginning. The remainder of Flight 347 to San Francisco bore little resemblance to its troubled beginning. The atmosphere in the first-class cabin had transformed from suspicion to reflection, the passengers processing their roles in what had transpired. Terrence Hughes occupied the seat across from Isaiah, occasionally pausing his work on a laptop to engage in quiet conversation. Their discussion ranged from personal experiences with discrimination to systemic changes needed in corporate America. You know, Terrence said, lowering his voice, what happened to you today happens to black professionals across this country every day, just without the dramatic reversal. Isaiah nodded. The only unusual part of this story is that you walked onto the plane. The rest, the suspicion, the accusations, the handcuffs, that's tragically common. Which is why we need to use this, Terrence replied. If you're willing, of course. As they discussed possibilities, Amelia Taylor approached hesitantly, hovering beside their seats until both men looked up. "Dr. Washington," she began, her voice unsteady, "I want to apologize again. When I lost my wallet, I made assumptions that I'm deeply ashamed of now." Isaiah studied her face, seeing genuine remorse. "Thank you for acknowledging that. I've been thinking about it," she continued. "About why I so quickly suspected you. I'd like to say it wasn't about race, but..." She trailed off, confronting her own bias perhaps for the first time. "I'm sorry. Truly sorry." After she returned to her seat, Terence commented, "That's something, at least. Self-awareness is the first step. The question is whether it leads to the second step," Isaiah replied. "And the third, and the fourth." Throughout the flight, other passengers made similar approaches. Some offering sincere apologies, others awkwardly attempting to distance themselves from what had happened. "I wanted to say something, but..." Isaiah received each interaction with the same composed dignity he had maintained throughout the ordeal. Sofia Rodriguez moved to an empty seat nearer to Isaiah and Terence, joining their conversation about how to address the broader issues at play. "The video is getting traction," she informed them, showing her phone screen. "I shared it with permission from a few civil rights organizations. Over 50,000 views already." Isaiah's immediate reaction was mixed, vindication alongside discomfort at becoming the unwitting face of yet another viral racial incident. "I'm not sure how I feel about becoming a hashtag," he admitted. "It doesn't have to be just that," Terence assured him. "We can shape the narrative, use this momentum constructively." As the discussion continued, they outlined a potential response. Terence would implement comprehensive anti-bias training for all Skyline Airways staff, with Isaiah consulting on the program's development. They would create a scholarship for minority medical students in Isaiah's name, funded by the airline. Most importantly, they would leverage the incident to spark broader conversation about the everyday discrimination faced by professionals of color. "Your medical conference presentation, it's on innovative cardiac procedures, correct?" Terence asked. Isaiah nodded. "Minimally invasive techniques that reduce recovery time by 60%. Would you consider adding a segment about today, about the barriers Black professionals face even at the height of their careers?" Isaiah considered the suggestion. His presentation was scientific, data-driven, not a platform for personal experience. And yet, wasn't this precisely the problem? The compartmentalization of these experiences, the pressure to remain professional, by never acknowledging the additional obstacles faced. "I think I would," Isaiah decided. Not to hijack the medical content, but to contextualize the journey that brought it into being. As the flight entered its final hour, Isaiah received a notification on his phone, an email from the conference organizers. "They've seen the video," he said, scanning the message. "They're asking if I would be willing to give an additional talk, specifically addressing today's events and broader issues of racial bias in medicine. Will you do it?" Sophia asked. "I think I have to," Isaiah replied. "If not me, then who?" The plane began its descent into San Francisco, the city lights appearing through breaks in the clouds below. Isaiah felt the weight of the day's events, the humiliation, the vindication, the unexpected platform that had emerged from both. His phone buzzed with another notification. A text message from the head of surgery at his hospital. "Just saw the video. Entire department standing with you. Take all the time you need." Similar messages flooded in from colleagues, former patients, and medical school classmates, a chorus of support that affirmed his place in a community that valued his contributions. As the wheels touched down at San Francisco International Airport, Terence turned to Isaiah. "This isn't over," he said. "But I think something important has begun." Isaiah nodded in agreement. The day had taken his carefully constructed professional life and transformed it into something he hadn't sought but now recognized as necessary, a platform from which to address issues larger than medicine, yet intrinsically connected to his work and identity. As passengers prepared to disembark, Harold Freeman's wife approached one final time, pressing a small envelope into Isaiah's hand. "My husband asked me to give you this before I left Denver," she explained. "He said it's important you have it." Inside the envelope was a handwritten note on hospital stationery. "Dr. Washington. Before today, I might have been one of those passengers who looked away. Your skills saved my life, but your dignity in the face of injustice may have saved my soul. I will never be silent again. With eternal gratitude. Harold Freeman, **. Isaiah carefully folded the note and returned it to the envelope, tucking it into his jacket pocket, a reminder that transformation was possible, that singular moments could indeed catalyze profound change. As he prepared to exit the plane that had been the site of both humiliation and vindication, Isaiah Washington knew with certainty that while he had boarded as simply a cardiac surgeon en route to a conference, he would disembark as something more, a reluctant but necessary voice in a conversation too long deferred. 3 months after the incident on Flight 347, Dr. Isaiah Washington stood at the podium of the Grand Ballroom at the Moscone Center in San Francisco. The room was filled beyond capacity, with attendees lining the walls and sitting cross-legged in the aisles, a stark contrast to the typical attendance for medical conference closing keynotes. "Before I begin," Isaiah said, adjusting the microphone, "I want to acknowledge that I stand here today as both a cardiac surgeon and a reluctant activist, two identities I once believed I could keep separate, but now understand are inextricably linked." The audience, a diverse gathering of medical professionals, journalists, corporate executives, and social justice advocates, listened in rapt attention. What had begun as a medical conference presentation had evolved into a landmark event in the ongoing conversation about racial bias in professional spaces. In the front row sat Terrence Hughes, who had taken the extraordinary step of implementing company-wide changes at Skyline Airways following the incident. Beside him was Sofia Rodriguez, whose recording had catalyzed a national dialogue about the everyday discrimination faced by professionals of color. 3 months ago, I boarded a plane as a cardiac surgeon heading to this very conference, Isaiah continued. What transpired during that flight has been viewed over 12 million times online. But what the video doesn't show is the lifetime of similar incidents that preceded it, the constant need to prove my credentials, to justify my presence in spaces where my white colleagues are welcomed without question. The transformation that had begun on that flight had rippled outward in unexpected ways. The day after landing in San Francisco, Isaiah had delivered his scheduled presentation on minimally invasive cardiac procedures to enthusiastic acclaim. But it was his additional session, hastily organized by the conference committee, that had drawn unprecedented attendance and media coverage. Titled simply, "The Incident, Racial Bias in Medicine and Beyond," Isaiah's candid discussion of his experience had resonated far beyond the medical community, sparking conversations in corporate boardrooms, hospital administration offices, and airline industry gatherings. "Today, I can report several concrete developments," Isaiah announced, advancing to a new slide in his presentation. First, Skyline Airways has implemented comprehensive anti-bias training for all staff, from executives to ground crew. This program, which I had the privilege of helping develop, is now being adopted by 3 other major airlines. Applause rippled through the audience. Second, the Skyline Washington Scholarship for Minority Medical Students has been established with an initial endowment of $5 million, providing full tuition for 5 students annually who demonstrate both academic excellence and commitment to serving underrepresented communities. More applause, louder this time. Third, I'm pleased to announce that Kent Davis and Melissa Parker, the security officer and flight attendant involved in the incident, have been terminated from Skyline Airways following a thorough investigation. The audience response was more muted at this, not celebration of individuals losing employment, but acknowledgement that accountability was an essential component of justice. However, Isaiah continued, termination alone addresses symptoms, not causes. Which is why I'm especially proud of the 4th development. He advanced to the next slide, displaying a curriculum outline. The Washington Protocol, a comprehensive training program for identifying and addressing implicit bias in healthcare, aviation, and corporate settings, has been adopted by 27 hospitals, 15 corporations, and 4 airlines to date. This initiative focuses not on punishment but on recognition and reformation of the systemic biases that led to my experience. The ballroom erupted in sustained applause. Isaiah waited for it to subside before continuing. But perhaps the most meaningful outcome for me personally has been this. He gestured toward the side of the stage, where a group of young black medical students stood. They stepped forward, joining Isaiah at the podium. These 12 students represent the future of medicine. Each has faced barriers similar to those I encountered throughout my career. Each has persevered despite those obstacles. And each has committed to mentoring the generation that will follow them. Isaiah introduced each student by name and specialty, giving them a moment in the spotlight they so rarely received. The pride on their faces was unmistakable, not just for the recognition, but for seeing someone who looked like them commanding the respect of this prestigious gathering. My experience on Flight 347 was simultaneously singular and universal, Isaiah continued after the students had returned to their seats. Singular in its specific circumstances, universal in its reflection of the indignities faced by countless professionals of color every day. From his pocket, Isaiah withdrew Harold Freeman's note, now slightly worn from frequent handling. Mr. Freeman, the passenger whose life I helped save during that flight, wrote something that has stayed with me. He said that while my medical skills saved his life, my dignity in the face of injustice may have saved his soul. Isaiah paused, letting the words resonate. That transformation, from passive observer to active ally, is what we must all strive for. Not just in dramatic moments captured on video, but in the quiet, daily interactions where bias often operates unchallenged. As Isaiah concluded his presentation, he shared one final development, his appointment to the hospital board at Memorial, where he would help shape policies to address the systemic inequities in healthcare delivery and medical education. The standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes, a powerful affirmation of both Isaiah's medical contributions and his newfound role as a catalyst for change. Later, as the conference wound down, Isaiah found himself in conversation with a young resident physician from Chicago. Dr. Washington, the young man said hesitantly, "Your presentation on minimally invasive procedures was brilliant, but what happened on that plane?" He struggled to find the right words. "Watching how you handled it, seeing you turn it into this movement, it's shown me that excellence isn't enough. We also have to be willing to speak truth, even when it's uncomfortable." Isaiah nodded, recognizing in the young doctor's eyes the same fire that had ignited in himself these past months. "The most powerful part," the resident continued, "is seeing you board planes now and receive respect not because you're Dr. Washington, the famous surgeon who went viral, but because systems are actually starting to change." It was true. Isaiah's most recent flights had been markedly different experiences, not because of personal recognition, but because airlines were actively implementing new training protocols inspired by his experience. As the conference came to a close, Isaiah prepared for his return flight to Atlanta. At the gate, a Skyline Airways employee approached with a tablet. "Dr. Washington, on behalf of Skyline Airways, I want to personally thank you for choosing to fly with us again," the agent said. "Mr. Hughes asked me to ensure your journey is comfortable." Isaiah appreciated the gesture but recognized its limitation. "Thank you," he replied, "but the true measure of our progress won't be how I'm treated now that I'm recognized, but how you treat the next black professional whose name you don't know." The agent nodded solemnly. "That's precisely what our new training emphasizes, sir. Every passenger deserves the same respect, regardless of who they are or what they look like." As Isaiah boarded the plane, he reflected on the journey of these past 3 months. The humiliation of being handcuffed and removed from Flight 347 would always be part of his story. But now it existed alongside the scholarship, the training protocol, the policy changes, and most importantly, the conversations that incident had sparked. Settling into his seat, Isaiah gazed out the window at the San Francisco skyline. A flight attendant offered a pre-departure beverage with a genuine smile, the same courtesy extended to every first-class passenger, regardless of race. It was a small thing, this equal treatment. So small that it should have been unremarkable. Yet Isaiah knew how remarkable it truly was, how many battles had been fought for this simple dignity, and how many remained to be won. As the plane lifted off, climbing into clear blue skies, Isaiah Washington felt a complex mixture of emotions. Pride in what had been accomplished, determination for the work still ahead, and a quiet hope that someday, a black professional boarding a plane would be just that, a professional boarding a plane, nothing more and nothing less. The path toward that future remained long and challenging. But for the first time in his career, Isaiah felt he was truly cleared for takeoff. Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination in a professional setting? What did you do about it? Comment your thoughts below, and let us know if you've ever been in a situation where you had to stand up against injustice. Your stories matter and can inspire others to speak out. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful narratives that shine a light on important social issues. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Sometimes the most important conversations start with a simple story. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Remember, true change happens not just in viral moments, but in our everyday choices to recognize and challenge bias wherever we encounter it. This story highlights how racial bias persists even for highly accomplished professionals. Dr. Washington's experience demonstrates that excellence alone cannot shield individuals from discrimination. True change requires active allies like Sophia who speak up in the moment and institutional leaders like Terence who leverage their power to create systemic reform. The incident reveals how quickly assumptions based on race can escalate from microaggressions to dangerous confrontations, but also shows the potential for transformation when bias is exposed and addressed directly. The most powerful lesson is that meaningful change happens at multiple levels, through individual courage, corporate accountability, policy reforms, and educational initiatives. Dr. Washington turned his humiliation into a catalyst for progress, creating pathways for future generations. His story reminds us that dignity in the face of injustice can inspire others to examine their own biases and become advocates for equality, proving that sometimes our most painful experiences can become platforms for our most important contributions. Have you ever witnessed discrimination and felt unsure how to respond? Share your experience in the comments below. What did you do, or what would you do differently now after hearing Dr. Washington's story? If you've ever been in Dr. Washington's position, what support would have made a difference? Your stories matter in this ongoing conversation about racial justice. Hit that like button if you believe in standing up against discrimination, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful narratives that challenge us to create a more equitable world. Share this video with someone who might need to see how speaking up can create real change. Thank you for joining us on this journey of reflection and action. Remember, the flight toward justice requires all of us on board, as witnesses, allies, and advocates. Together, we can transform painful moments into platforms for progress.